My name is Maya. I am 27 years old, and this is the story of how my brother's wife tried to erase my family from her perfect world. I never thought quiet revenge would teach me so much about dignity, presence, and belonging. But it did. I will never forget it. The shift began 2 years ago, when my older brother Lucas told us he was getting married. We were thrilled. Our parents cried when he announced it at Sunday dinner, and my dad hugged him so hard he nearly knocked over the glasses. Mum started ironing old linens, planning brunches, making lists. Weddings had always felt distant to us, more of a movie than something real. Finally, we would have one in our home. We thought we were welcoming a new daughter into the family, someone who would honor the bond we held with such pride. Instead, we were quietly taught that some people only take and never once think of giving. Her name was Raven. Sharp movements, sharp expressions, pretty and polished. At first glance, she seemed charming, but once the shine faded, she felt more like a puzzle that never fit. She shook hands like she wasn't sure whether to trust you. She made small suggestions that didn't feel so small. You should try this lipstick. Maybe don't wear heels. It draws attention. Subtle cuts that landed soft but deep. One memory haunts me. The first time she visited our home, she brushed her fingers along the hallway photographs. They were mismatched frames, decades old, uneven. Raven smiled like someone tolerating a smell. She said nothing, but her eyes judged everything. Later that night, Lucas asked if Mum had ever thought about updating the pictures. It came out casually, but it had her fingerprints. That was the first quiet warning. As the wedding approached, Raven established rules. She insisted that every member of our family wear navy blue and silver to the wedding. No other colours, not even a soft shade close to silver. She said it would look more aesthetically clean. My youngest cousin, barely 7, cried because she wanted to wear a pink dress her grandmother had bought. Raven told her that weddings were not for children to express themselves. I remember my aunt swallowing hard, saying it was fine, that she'd find a new dress. I wanted to speak up, to tell Raven that this was cruel, but Lucas stood beside her, nodding, as though this was normal. We tried our best to stay united. We spent money we didn't have, travelled from distant cities, made adjustments, not because we feared her, because we loved Lucas. He had always been the brother who walked me to school, made me pancakes when Dad was late, helped me move apartments when I didn't know how to lift a box. Even when he wasn't perfect, he showed up. We wanted to show up too. The night before the wedding, there was a rehearsal dinner. The restaurant was rustic, warm, and candlelit. Our family sat near the back, talking softly. Raven moved around the room like she was floating. At one point, she stopped near us and joked, in a tone far too pointed, that our side of the family never took anything seriously, that she was shocked we even showed up dressed nicely. Mum laughed, small and fragile. One of my aunts set down her drink and quietly excused herself. No one responded. I remember gripping my napkin, feeling the fibres cut into my palm. I looked at Lucas, hoping he would step in. He smiled awkwardly, like he thought it was harmless, or maybe he didn't know how to stop her. That flashback still comes to me, especially the moment her eyes passed over us like we were broken dolls. The wedding day itself was beautiful, at least on the surface. Soft lights, polished chairs, a band that played gentle strings. We followed instructions. We posed for every photo requested. I fixed Lucas's tie before the sibling shot. I saw my parents standing under the arbor, their matching silver outfits gleaming. Even Raven's parents told us how stunning we looked. Everything felt like a painting briefly, but sometimes paintings lie. Weeks passed. Then the photographer sent the wedding photos and highlight video. Mum texted me, "Come over, we can watch together." I drove there immediately. We sat on the sofa, the 3 of us. Dad leaned forward with his hands locked together. The video started. Music rose. Raven walked down the aisle, smiling. Lucas cried a soft tear. I waited for us to appear. I waited and waited. Nothing. 3 minutes of celebration, laughter, dancing, toasts. Not a single shot of our family. Not my parents. Not my sister. Not my aunts. Not me. A sliver of time. 3 seconds, where my parents stood beside Lucas and Raven, then gone. It felt like we were ghosts. Mum said nothing. She stood up and walked into the kitchen. I followed her. She held onto the counter and closed her eyes. She whispered, "Were we never there?" I felt my throat close. Later that night, I texted Raven politely. I asked if she could share photos of us, especially siblings. She responded, "Those weren't taken." I told her I remembered clearly we took them. She said she had no idea what I was talking about. My memory must be wrong. Gaslighting feels strange when you know the truth. It doesn't break you immediately. It seeps, like water under a door. A month later, I overheard at a dinner party that Raven had told her friend she didn't want short people and ugly colours to ruin her wedding images. I knew she meant my mother, small and soft-spoken, and my aunts, who always wore bold colours. That cruelty ignited something inside me, not rage, something colder. 6 months passed. I reached out again, gently, asking if there were any unpublished photos. Silence. Then, "No clue what you're talking about." She had erased us from her memory, her story, her marriage history. We would never exist in that chapter. That night, I sat outside on the porch. It was raining softly. I thought about Lucas, how he looked at her during the ceremony. He adored her. Despite everything, he remained my brother. I wondered if he knew what she had done. I wondered if he would care. I told myself I wouldn't make him choose, but I also wouldn't let my family remain invisible. Time passed. I met Eli. Kind eyes, calm voice, steady presence. He listened to me without interrupting. Sometimes, sharing old pain helps you recognize new beauty. We dated, grew together, and finally got engaged. Mum cried again. Dad hugged me. I promised myself this wedding would honor my family. We set a date, a small-town venue, a garden surrounded by tall oak trees. I wanted simplicity, honesty, the kind of celebration where every moment was earned, not staged. My friend Claire helped with planning. She listened as I told her about Raven. She shook her head, frustrated. She said, "People like that are mirrors. They only reflect themselves." Her words stayed with me. During cake tasting one afternoon, I found Mum sitting alone on the patio, holding her phone. She was looking at a single photo from Lucas's wedding. Just that 3-second shot. She said softly, "We looked so beautiful that day. Why didn't she want us?" My throat tightened. I promised her, "You will be seen this time. Not just seen, celebrated." I hired a videographer and photographer that Claire recommended. In our first meeting, I asked if I could speak with him privately. His name was Gray. Quiet, careful. I told him everything. I explained the wedding, the erasure, the humiliation. He listened without judging. Then he asked what I wanted. I said, record Raven when she arrives. Follow her, make her feel like she is part of something, but in the final cut, erase her, completely. I expected him to hesitate. He didn't. He nodded, understanding more than I said. He whispered, "I can do that." Originally, I never planned to invite her, but weddings have a way of spreading news. At a family dinner, she approached me. She said she might have to work the day before and after the wedding, but she could make it, as though her presence was a gift. I just smiled, saying, "The reservation is set, whether you're there or not." Her eyes flickered. It was the first time I saw uncertainty in her. When I mailed her invitation, I spelled her name wrong. Raven became Raven. A tiny fracture. A reminder that perfection is fragile. My wedding approached. Dress fittings, flower arrangements, playlists. My parents glowed. Claire came over often, helping me prepare. We would talk late into the night, planning and laughing. But sometimes, When I was alone, I felt old anger, deep and quiet. I would look at the sky, thinking of that erased memory. The day of the wedding arrived. Morning sunlight spilled across the fields. Mum hugged me so tightly I thought her arms might never let go. She whispered, "I'm so proud of you." Dad kissed my forehead. Eli stood at the altar, smiling like the world made sense again. Raven arrived in navy blue and silver, our old colours. The irony made my stomach twist, but I said nothing. Gray followed her discreetly, adjusting his camera. She preened, thinking she was being honoured. She posed, leaning into every frame. She whispered to someone beside her, "They're finally doing things correctly." I looked at Claire, who rolled her eyes behind a glass. Throughout the ceremony, Raven fluttered through the crowd. She made sure to stand close to the action, brushing shoulders, laughing loudly. At one point, she even tried to position herself near me during the group shot. Claire stepped in, gently redirecting her away. That flash of irritation across her face was priceless, though she hid it well. Reception began. Music, dancing, speeches. My best friend told a story about how Eli and I met. My sister danced like she was free. Mum cried during our first dance. I saw Raven nearby, smiling like she owned the moment. She stepped close to Gray several times, asking if he got her good angles. I overheard him say, "You look wonderful." I smiled quietly, knowing how temporary that compliment was. A cliffhanger moment came later that night. Raven stood near the cake table, chatting loudly. Lucas wasn't with her. I saw him outside alone, in the cold air. I stepped out. He stared at the stars. He whispered, "Sometimes I wonder if I made a mistake." His voice trembled. That moment gutted me. I wanted to ask him everything, but he shook his head, saying, "Let's not talk about it here." His misery felt like a shadow trailing him. Weeks passed. Then Gray delivered the preview video. My family gathered in my parents' living room. The air felt electric. The video began. Mum hugging me before the ceremony, Dad wiping a tear, Lucas giving me a shaky smile as he fixed my veil, Claire dancing with a bright laugh, Eli's voice trembling during vows, my sister's hands clutching mine. Faces, joy, our family alive and present. Raven was nowhere. Not in the ceremony, not in the reception, not in the toasts, not in the group shots, not even in the background. It was as if the wind itself had more presence than she did. My mum laughed softly. My sister clapped her hands. Dad whispered, "Finally, justice." I watched quietly. My heart felt strangely calm. I wondered how Raven would react. She didn't say anything immediately. She didn't text. Weeks later, Lucas told me she asked when she would get to see herself in the footage. He shrugged, saying, "Maybe you weren't in many shots." I stared at his face, searching. He looked weary, older. In the months that followed, something subtle shifted. Lucas began showing up at our parents' house alone. He sat at the kitchen table, staring into a mug of coffee. He talked to Dad about work. He helped Mum in the garden. He rarely mentioned Raven. Whenever her name came up, he spoke quietly, as if fearing the world might hear. One evening, he asked to see the wedding footage again. He watched carefully. When the video ended, he didn't speak. Finally, he said, "I'm sorry. I don't know what happened between you all, but I'm sorry. I didn't know how to answer." His apology felt like a crack forming in his life. I only hoped it would lead to light, not collapse. As months passed, I began to let go. I thought about revenge often, how it shapes us. It didn't bring me joy the way people imagine, but it gave me balance. It returned to my family something stolen. Our place in our memories. Our right to exist. Claire asked once, "Would you do it again?" I thought long. Yes, but maybe not for me. For my parents. For the little girl who thought she did something wrong. Revenge is strange. It isn't loud. It isn't always cruel. Sometimes it's just a story corrected. Raven eventually stopped asking about the footage. She unfollowed me online. She avoided family gatherings. Eventually, I heard she and Lucas were spending more time apart. I never asked for details. People unravel quietly. I learned something essential. Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by who holds you when you fall, who sees you when others look away, who writes you into their stories instead of erasing you. Raven tried to remove us from history. I reminded her that history has two authors, and mine had a steadier hand. In the end, our wedding became what Lucas's wedding never was. An honest celebration, a place where love was visible, tangible, where Mom danced without fear, Dad held her hand. Eli and I built something real. Revenge didn't make me bitter, it made me clear. Some people try to dim your light, others help you shine. We choose which story to tell. I chose truth. And the truth is simple. She erased us from her wedding, so I erased her from mine. It wasn't about cruelty. It was about balance. We existed. We mattered. And we always will.